Avengers makes some room for Solo. Danny Boyle might not do Bond. And Bruce Willis wakes up from a 15-year nap to play John McClane. Movie talk coming at you now. Welcome back to Movie Talk. Hey, it's Movie Talk, and I also wanted to let you guys know.
What show is it again?
I think it's Movie Talk. We talk about what?
Television.
Sports.
Yes.
So I know that a lot of people, we've been talking about the new look and everything too, but I also wanted to give a big shout out to Brian Ward, who not only did Brian Ward do all the Schmodown graphics, all the new graphics and the new feel and look that you see now. Brian Ward, he's a very talented artist, and got to give some props to Mr. Ward. But right now, we're going to talk about everything going on in the world of movies. That's what we do here on this show. And the first story, right off the bat, we are going to be talking about Avengers Infinity War. It came out yesterday that this movie, we knew how big it was going to be. We know how big it's the box office is going to be on this film, and they made an announcement yesterday that it is now coming out April 27th, which is a week before the release. It'll still be on course when it was supposed to come out overseas, but the question now is why? Why are they doing this? What is the reasoning behind it? And the way that they did it was actually pretty clever also. Robert Downey Jr. had tweeted it out. Then Marvel started to have this kind of little dialogue with him. And he's like, hey, can I see it a little sooner? He's like, yeah, sure. You and a couple of friends. And then he included the Avengers on it. And then he said, well, what about all my friends? And talking about the entire world. Sure, why not? And then here we go. April 27th is once again a clever way to do it, to market it. The movie is going to be coming out. But as far as why, I think it's pretty clear. I think that after the success of Black Panther, and right now the Marvel machine is just booming through, taking no prisoners, making a lot of money. And Avengers, even before the success of Black Panther, we knew it was going to make a lot of cash. But Han Solo is another Disney property. It was at this point, before yesterday's announcement, it was only going to have about 2 weeks breathing room, and then good luck. You're going to have to take on the Avengers' third week, someone in your family. Not to mention also going up against Deadpool. This gives it a little breathing room. I think, at least another week to do that. And that's kind of the big news as far as that goes. We'll get into the slate and the other things that they announced. But Clarke, what do you think about the fact that they did move it? Is it just Solo? Is it something else? What are your thoughts?
It's probably a combination. So correct me if I'm wrong, but Solo is May, yes?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, so somebody on Twitter pointed this out, which I call him cynical DC apologist Mike Kalinowski.
Oh, Jesus.
He was, you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
He was, and I love Mike Kalinowski,
Yes,
but
don't we all?
he was basically positing that Disney feels like they know Solo sucks. And so they are giving more room for Infinity Wars so that it can, not necessarily have that stink on it. I'm not sure how I feel about that necessarily. I will say, for me, the Avengers, and I guess the Avengers not so much, but Captain America is always April, right? Mm-hmm. So this isn't, to me, unprecedented. And I guess if Disney feels strongly that they don't have competition that weekend at the box office, and Disney's not going to do anything that they don't know is a lock to get them more money.
Sure.
So whatever information or intel that they are working off of seems to point to that. So it doesn't surprise me. But I also don't read into it as much on the Solo stuff as everybody else.
No, I don't think the unprecedented is necessarily the fact that they're putting it out in April. I think what's a little unprecedented about it is that they make an announcement, now in
Sure.
March. That's the one. It's just because, and I love Mike. I went to school with Mike. He's wrong as far as why they want to do this. It's to help out their property. They wouldn't, if they thought it would stink, they would have moved it out in May.
Right, exactly.
And from what I'm hearing anyway, from a lot of different people, and there's been stuff that's been shown in other conventions, and people, and I said this on Jedi Council, the movie apparently is really good, with the kid being okay. And I'll be all right with that if it's a good Star Wars movie, but it has nothing to do with the fact that they think it stinks. If they did, it wouldn't be in May. So I love you, Mike, but not this time. Dennis, what are your thoughts on this? Is there another reason why they moved it, or is it pretty much to let Solo have a little breathing room?
Actually, I think the Solo thing is secondary. I think it's the success of Black Panther. Mm-hmm. I think Black Panther, the momentum they have with that character, they didn't expect it. Look, nobody expected to make that type of money. And so the closer they can get that release date to Black Panther kind of petering off, the better. Also, remember, Black Panther is featured heavily in the trailer. He's going to be a big part of Infinity War. So I think they're going to try ride that. And this is not a decision they made months ago. This is probably like fairly recently, because there's a billboard that I see every day that I drive home, and a new billboard for Infinity War went up maybe a week and a half ago, has the May 4th date on there. So I know they pre-plan all that stuff, but at some point, if you knew a few months ago, you'd be like, okay, let's stop that run of billboards. It's worth the money to put up a new one. It has the May 4th date on there.
What do you think, Rocha? You think that it's a bit of a mix here? Do you think you lean more in the fact that the overall drive was what Dennis is saying because of Black Panther, or are you more on the side of Clarke and myself to where it's Solo is and that's such an opposing point of view, but just where do you lean more?
Well, I think you have to look at the whole big picture with Disney. Right now, they're competing. Their own properties are competing with each other, so they have to create the space to make the most amount of money. It's a business. You got to make money. So I think what they want to do is give it a little bit of time between this film and Solo. I think they also want to go for the biggest global opening. So they got a little. Just as Black Panther is petering out, but the excitement is still there. People are going to come in mass. The issue though may come because this is still coming during the school year. Now, if you look at the analytics, when school is out, these blockbuster films make more money per average. So this is the situation that might affect Avengers Infinity War in a negative way. And I think that's the only thing you can look at here. But also you got to look at spoilers. People are becoming more adamant about spoiling things. This Marvel versus DC thing, you cannot discount it. It's a very big deal. Michael bringing that up. Mike's coming from his place of being a DC defender, and he's going to say this stuff and kind of try to stain Solo. But what you're saying is right. A lot of people are saying positive things about Solo. So I think this is about Disney being smart. They're competing with their brand, so they have to create space. Plus, these creators are going to be like, why am I going to spend all this time making this movie if it's not going to make the most amount of money? Because your other movie is coming up that someone else is making at Disney. It's going to crowd it over. And so these are the things I think they're looking at, and I think they want to make the most amount of money here that they can, and this all makes sense for everybody involved.
It was. I also think it was a big mistake in the first place to not keep that Star Wars date of December. They owned that December date. They did it already with Rogue One. They did it with episode 8 and 9, and 7 and 8, and now they have they got away from that, and they're in this predicament. And the other thing is, I don't think the movie's completely finished yet. Solo, with all the stuff they did, so they're going to be they're shut off from the world right now, locked in a room somewhere, making sure they hit that date. So there's a lot of stress on that in general. But there's a couple other announcements that came out with this, not just the fact that they're going to April 27th. They released 6 new untitled Marvel movies for release through 2022. And there's a movie coming out on May 7th, 2021, July 30th, 2021, and then November 5th, 2021. Then in 2022, there's one in February, there's one in May, and then there's one in July. So they are, I mean, that's the biggest. Has there ever been one that close in between 5, 6, 22, and then 7, 29, 22? I guess Black Panther.
In the very beginning of the MCU, Iron Man and Hulk were only separated by like a month and a half. I think it was. I remember after Iron Man came out, and I was like, why is this Hulk coming out right this soon?
Yeah.
But doesn't I mean, I think just generally, I always think April, May is Captain America or Avengers. July is Guardians time or whatever that
It originally
one is.
came out in August, the first Guardians, and the last one
was.
I think it was May, wasn't it? I don't know. Either way, they
maybe
moved
you're
it.
right.
They moved it up.
I guess what I'm saying is that late summer slot doesn't surprise me, and then November makes sense too.
They always have November. Yeah, Thor.
So isn't this kind of like pretty consistent with what they've been doing in the past?
Well, I think they just started doing like the 3. I think this was the first year we got 3. Is that true?
Because we got Ant-Man and the Wasp still coming.
Yeah, but they're going into, because of the success that they've had, they're able to do 3, and they not showing any signs of slowing down. So it makes sense. I don't know what the plan is, but it actually jumps back into something I was talking about again on Jedi Council. You can clearly see that there is a plan for Marvel, and even though they're securing these dates, they're going to kind of maneuver it. So there's that. And a couple other news, some more tidbits here from Disney. They moved Mulan back a year and a half, and they also removed that Anna Kendrick Santa Claus movie, Noelle, from the release schedule and put it on the streaming service. That's the smartest thing they've done in a long time. Then the Black Panther is on the verge of crossing the 800 million mark at the global box office. So this new release date, it does actually make sense when you really think about it, like Dennis was talking about. And films are already set to open over the April 27th weekend, including I Feel Pretty, starring Amy Schumer. And then we also have Traffic, starring Laz Alonso and Omar Epps. And those movies right now are probably like damn it. You know, I mean, even though it's a different audience, it's still going to pick at it a little bit because it would have had nothing there as far as domestic went. So,
well, not just that, Rampage is coming out. So what is
April
what is-
20th.
It comes to 20 right around the same
Right.
time.
4/20.
So they get 1 week
Yeah.
of making that money. So it really affects their box office. What does The Rock do? Dwayne Johnson. What do they do with this movie? Do they move it around? Because Deadpool moved back. Because Deadpool moved up as well. Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of maneuvering going on last minute, which is really interesting. Because usually they take a long time before they make these changes.
So did Deadpool? Do you think because of the deal with Fox? Do you think Disney obviously gave them the heads up to make the property a little bit more scratch to say, hey, we're moving up, get ready to make the date also, or that would have happened inevitably?
I don't know. Everything I'm hearing about the Fox deal is that it is not
Going down.
I mean, that
Yeah.
it's not a lock,
Right.
especially now that it was in Comcast threw
Comcast,
the
yeah,
hat
came
in the
into
ring.
picture.
Yeah,
Yep.
so I think that's a very generous idea that
Yeah.
you're throwing out
That's
there.
what I do.
Well, I think that's why they're speeding that stuff into production with Doctor Doom and Silver Surfer.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
and
they're trying to get as much as they can.
They're trying to put it all in there.
before.
All right,
Yeah.
so moving on to our next story here. As I said in the beginning, Bruce Willis, he's confirming Die Hard 6 is still in the works. He was on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, where he confirmed that Die Hard is still in the works. Excuse me. He confirmed that the new script is done. He'll be flying out to California to check it out. And I don't know if he'll have an earpiece on for while he's doing that. But the previous report for the sixth Die Hard was that it was described as year one, where it's supposed to be a prequel and a sequel, with most of the action taking place in the late 70s, back when John McClane was a cop in gritty New York City. I'm one of the biggest Die Hard fans that you know, and Clarke Wolfe knows it because it's in the Schmodown all the time. But this news still stinks to me. Rocha, I'll tell you why.
Yeah, please do.
I just think that he's checked out, man. He's Bruce Willis from The Expendables. He hasn't been John McClane in a very long time. I also think that this idea for a script is silly, and I would have liked to seen him. There was a script floating around about him going back to Nakatomi Plaza and for the anniversary, and it all goes down again. That was the version I wanted to see. This sounds like a bad streaming movie.
It's the stupidest idea. Look, you can come at me all you want. Man's 62 years old. Give me a damn break. Listen, this idea, if you're going to go back and do year one, it's not a comic book, so I don't know why you're doing year one. He was just a cop. The thing that was the greatest thing about Die Hard was he was just a regular cop that was caught in this situation, using his ability to assess a situation, get out of these. What was great about it is at any moment he could have been killed, and you could identify with that. You know, you're not as skilled as a cop, most people watching the film, but the way he got out of those situations were inventive and interesting and fun, and he was going against these terrorists, and he was making jokes. It was the appeal of Bruce Willis, who we were just getting to know off Moonlighting, coming in and doing this great stuff, and it was really fun. Now, there's these films have progressed. They've turned him into a damn superhero like Dom and Fast and the Furious.
Jumping on jets.
Jumping off jets in the middle of the highway, which was okay. It was fun for what it was, but I think that's the top of the Die Hard thing was 4, and then everything has kind of fallen off from there, and especially that last one. Sweet Jesus Christ, it was terrible. So this idea of a year one, unless he's like just solving a crime, then I'm not down with it, because you're going to make him on another adventure that he's doing all these kinds of things. Then the Nakatomi Plaza, then Die Hard loses its appeal that he was a regular guy being thrown in an insane situation that he's never confronted. And if you're going to put him in another insane situation in year one, then you're killing it. You're killing the whole reason people love this franchise, which is that first movie.
Is he out of his mind, or is he correct? Or Clark?
I'm confused. Did they invent time travel for this movie? I'm serious.
They're going to cast a younger actor to play him.
So he's going to be
do
like,
it like telling it probably in back.
Unless I hope they don't try to take the
de-aging
Irishman,
technology?
like do the Irishman thing that they're doing. I don't want them to do that.
This is Tom Cruise and the Mummy being called young man again.
Right.
This is ridiculous. I like Die Hard. I watch it at Christmas.
Me too.
It's a fine franchise, and clearly people all over the world love it. But I don't get this. And I also, we've seen hit or miss with casting a younger version of the actor who is still kind of sort of playing that character. And I don't know, this whole thing sounds like a cash grab. It sounds very obvious. And also, as you guys have sort of touched on, Bruce Willis, as of late, is sleepwalking through pretty much everything he does. And I think Bruce Willis is a very talented performer. I think he's funny.
When he's dialed in, yeah.
When he shows up, it's kind of like Harrison Ford.
Look what happened in Looper.
Yeah,
great.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like when he shows up, he is great.
Yeah.
But this just sounds so obviously for a ridiculous cash grab. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, and Clark brings up a great point, Dennis. I think when look at like Looper, when you bring that, Rian Johnson was able to bring that performance out of him. Len Wiseman doesn't seem to be, and has proven to not be the guy to be able to do that. And I don't really believe that Len Wiseman's that great of a filmmaker, to be honest.
No, I mean, I think Rocha was generous saying after 4. It's like it was more after 3 because 4 wasn't that great either. I mean, it wasn't as bad as 5.
It wasn't
terrible.
embarrassing.
No.
Right.
It just wasn't really Die Hard, and he hasn't played the real Die Hard, the real John McClane since 3 anyway. So I don't see the point of this. And if he's going to be in it and they're doing the whole young thing, then I don't want to see him sitting there in like a rocking chair talking about the good old times or whatever.
With Jai Courtney on his lap. Let me tell you something about the first
Jai
time.
Courtney, I gotta see Jai Courtney anywhere near this movie.
And then you have Death Wish coming out, which it looks, at least to me, terrible, and I don't think it's going to do anything at the box office. So I don't know this, and because the Die Hard franchise name has been kind of sullied since after 3, I don't know how many people are going to want to see it.
I agree. I just think and that's more than ever why they should have went back to the roots as far as trying to get him to the Nakatomi Plaza, give it to a different director. But hey, it is what it is. Next story, Danny Boyle and Richard Curtis, they team up for a Universal comedy. Bond 25 now is in question because according to The Hollywood Reporter, Danny Boyle and Love Actually screenwriter Richard Curtis have teamed up for an untitled music-inspired comedy at Universal. Now, they kept a lot of the details are under wraps, and it's supposed to have, it's musically themed, and it's supposed to be set in the 60s or the 70s. Universal is eyeing a shoot for as early as summer. But now this starts to conflict with other things because they want to move. What do they do with Bond? Do they push Bond if Danny Boyle was going to do it? Because from all the reports are saying that this is going to be Boyle's next film. So what do, Dennis? Do you say, wait a minute, Danny, we're going to wait for you, finish this thing, and then come back and do Bond? Or you say, no, this is Bond, thanks, but we're going to go find somebody else?
What I think they're going to do is say, okay, thanks, we'll find somebody else.
Right.
I think what they should do is wait for Danny Boyle. I think Danny Boyle will bring something new, something fresh to the Bond franchise that we haven't seen before. I mean, since Daniel Craig started as Bond, we've had this good movie, bad movie, good movie, bad movie. And so I think Danny Boyle is, he's Oscar-nominated director. His movies, like Steve Jobs, I love that film. Slumdog Millionaire. He's done a lot of fantastic films, and I think the way that the ideas that he would bring to Bond would make people come out and see it and see something new. But I think they won't wait and they'll get someone else.
Rocha, what do you think? You think Dennis is onto something, or you think they're gonna say, no, we'll wait for you, Danny. You're Danny Boyle.
I'd be surprised if they waited. But that being said, there was the story that him and Craig, I think John Hodge, who had written Trainspotting, they were working on a new and interesting approach to Bond. I don't know if I see Daniel Craig with Danny Boyle. That's my thing. I don't know if those two work. I know he did 28 Days Later, which is great, like stark, horror, great stuff. But I don't know if I've seen anything from Danny that would make me believe he'd bring something incredibly interesting and new to Bond with Daniel Craig. Really? I think if you recast Bond with Danny Boyle, that's a different thing because you've got to have a guy who has got to do smirks. He likes these kind of comedies even within the drama, these comedic moments within the drama. And I think Daniel does them from brutality as opposed to subtlety, which is how Danny Boyle likes to do it in his movies. So I would be surprised if they waited for him. And it's not like there's not a bunch of directors sitting there who'd be great doing great action Bonds. And I disagree with Dennis. It's a good movie. Good movie.
What?
Good movie. Yes,
You're calling Quantum of Solace?
Quantum of Solace is not a good movie. So I say Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, blah blah blah. Skyfall, the greatest one ever, and then Spectre gets too much criticism. It's actually a good Bond film, and I will defend that thing.
I'm with you, Dennis. But I would also say that I don't agree with you when it comes to the Danny Boyle thing with being able to work with Daniel Craig. And I think Daniel Craig has been able to pull off some comedy stuff without just being brutal in other movies. Maybe you're just thinking of maybe Bond, specifically in the way he plays Bond.
But even Logan Lucky, he was like a convict doing the comedy.
Yeah,
there's just that kind
I know,
of,
but
there's a little more brutality to him.
Well, they're not going to get rid of Daniel Craig because he just signed a new deal.
Exactly.
So if I don't disagree that they're probably they won't wait on Danny Boyle, but I completely disagree the fact that Danny Boyle wouldn't be able to work with Daniel Craig, and I think he'd be able to direct him and do a really good movie. Clark, the other thing is if they wait, then it might have to shift the release date to November 8th, 2019 for Bond. Is that something you think that they would even consider?
Well, what is the release date now?
I think that, isn't it, it's 2018. Wait, when
We're
is it?
in 2018.
Wait, no, sorry, not 2018. Where
So 20 maybe is what you're saying? Push it a year?
They're
they
going to
wanna-
shift the release date of. They're going to move. It's now. It's scheduled for November 8th, 2019. Now they would have to shift that and
Right.
move that. So
Right.
probably another year or something.
I mean, look, I think I think something that maybe we could consider is if Daniel Craig is on board for someone like Danny Boyle coming onto the franchise. I don't think Daniel Craig is in any hurry to make this movie. I think he's over this, and he's said, yes, I'll do it one more time, probably because they backed up a dump truck full of money to his house, and he said, thank you very much. And so I actually think that if he was interested, and if he was like, okay, Danny Boyle, that's something that I could be excited about, then he probably would have that leverage and say, no, you wait for him because this is what I want. I don't know if that's the case. I do think that he's the right guy for the job, meaning Danny Boyle. I think that that he is, we talked about it when the news kind of started breaking a couple of weeks ago, but, you know, I feel like he is a solid, you know, English filmmaker. He makes sense for what they want the franchise to be, but he also has, as we've all talked about, that little sly wink.
Right.
He's not a one-note kind of guy. His movies are very different, vastly different, and energetic across the board. And so I think he's the perfect guy for this. One thing we haven't talked about is this delightful comedy that it sounds like.
right. That's true.
This is my point. This is what you can do.
Because I mean, like I think, you know, I get that people. We live in a, to quote my least favorite Jerry Maguire, we live in a cynical world. But like Richard Curtis, man, when he gets it right, he is fun, and I want to see him and Danny Boyle do something together. I think that could be really, really great. So I'm on board across the board for all of this.
I think Clarke brings up a great. No, we just kind of completely brushed past that, and but that brings up a greater point, is because that's how big Bond is, right? That's what the story is that let's talk about Bond, but then the question is, what the hell is this movie? Because what happens now if fast forward a year, 2 years from now, the movie comes out and it wins all these Oscars? Like, remember when they were talking about him doing Bond? That's exactly the conversation that we'll have, and you're absolutely right. You shouldn't just brush over it, because when Danny Boyle commits to something and he wants to do something, he's got passion about it, you should be looking forward to it. All right, before we get to the last story, also I wanted to remind you guys we'll be taking some live questions from you guys on Twitter, so hit up @Collider Video. Start asking those questions now, and change it up a little bit. I know you want to talk about Marvel. I know you want to talk about DC. I know you want to talk about Star Wars, but what else you got in the film world? What else you want to talk about? A lot of news has been happening, so let's hear it from you guys. But the last story here that we're going to be talking about with the crew is, once again, the Hollywood Reporter reports that a film version of the cult graphic novel Black Hole by Charles Burns is in the works with dope director and one-time Flash director Rick Famuyiwa. Did I say that right? Sure. There we go. Set to helm. Black Hole follows a group of high schoolers who contract a mysterious sexually transmitted disease known as the bug, and as the syndrome causes physical mutations, turning the teens into something else, the community is left to deal with the fallout. There's no release date that has been set at this time. Clarke, this reminds me of that movie that came out, that little, what was that?
It Follows.
It Follows. It reminds me of It Follows, but a bigger version of that. You're the horror expert here, the horror thriller expert here. Yeah, I mean, come on. And when I hear this, I go to you first. Is this something because of what Rick has done in the past that gets you excited, or is this something that you don't really care about?
No, I think it sounds very, very cool, and I think that, you know, whether you're using the It Follows comparison, there's a movie called Contracted. This whole STD subgenre, or whatever, however you want to sort of define it, is a very, it's been in, you know, horror forever, and it's a sounds like. When it gets into the physical mutation part, what it sounded like to me was maybe an allegory for HIV, when people didn't know what was going on, what the virus was, or what the disease was, and I think that if you have this independent, you know, filmmaker sensibility applied to something that is, I would argue, probably talking about a bigger subject matter, you have the recipe for a really great, smart, socially conscious thriller or horror film. And I know it's surprising to a lot of people in the wake of Get Out that this sort of stuff is sort of baked into genre, but it's always been there. And so I'm excited at the idea that studios are starting to wake up and come around to that idea in a more mainstream way. And so I think it sounds great.
What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, I mean, especially with Rick Famuyiwa behind it and what he did with Dope, with the high school setting, what he can do with this. I actually tried to look up this comic book because Schnepp had featured it in one of the comic book shoppings, and it's not available on Comixology, so I couldn't read it. I wanted to check it out, but yeah, I think it's a good fit for him. I mean, it is a much smaller film than Flash, so. Right. Let's see what happens, especially with his career.
I'm glad you brought that up, though, because I think that's what a lot of these directors do sometimes. That is a mistake, is that go in a movie like Dope, which is amazing, and then jump into The Flash. And then it's like, because if you look at somebody like Gavin Hood, who did Satsi back in the day, and then he did that Wolverine movie, and he got trampled on by the studio. They had their way with him, and then you don't really hear from him as much. He's a very talented filmmaker. And I don't want to see that happen to him. So I'm glad that it's going from, take your time. Ryan Coogler is an example. He went from Fruitvale Station to Creed, which is still a bigger budget movie, but it's not Black Panther. And then you take your steps, that's how you build a career. So I'm glad that he's going that way. What do you think, Rocha?
Yeah, I like it too. I think his tweet, throwing some shade at DC, lets you know this man's built a stronger character. He has no problem going up against the studio, going toe-to-toe with the studio. And so I think this is a nice move for him. This is a great graphic novel. A lot of people have been talking about since 2005, won the Eisner Award. It's been one that people, and you're right, the allegory is correct, Clarke. And it's about time this started happening because great horror is based on real things that you can sense actually happening. I know people like slasher stuff. I'm always hot and cold about that, but actual horror is about something. And we've been a sexually promiscuous society since the 70s, right? Since the sexual revolution. So the generation upon generation, now more so.
The Romans.
I'm saying, but I mean, our society. And it's more
Back in my day.
You know what we did? You took her out for it. No, but these kinds of things, you see that. But nowadays, sex is very much an accepted thing, very much across the. So horror based in this thing connects to the people you're trying to pitch horror to, which is the younger generation always. So this is a great choice by him. I think it's, like you said, Dennis, going back to the Dope kind of territory, younger kids, this kind of thing. I set in the Pacific Northwest, which I love. I'd love to see a horror set there. A lot of rain, woods, all the, so it's all built in to be a lot of fun. So I'm excited.
You're right. I think that one of the things, because over the last couple of years, I think horror has had a great shift, and you can tell me how wrong I am here, but I think it's had a great shift because it's gotten away from just the slasher. We certainly still have the slasher and the jump scare movies. You're always going to have those, but they were the focus because you could do them so cheap. You could cast nobodies in it, cost nothing to make. But even when you look at what Blumhouse does, because Blumhouse still takes that model, but they give you a little bit more, they give you a lot more substance now, and that's why these movies I think have, whether you get, because Get Out it's a thriller horror. Look what it did.
Yeah.
It was able to not only take the creepy clown that looks like a slasher, and in all elements it's a horror film, but there was so much to it. It was a coming of age story. And I think that that's when you get directors like this, that you start to build off the genre and give it a bit of a resurgence.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I say this, I said it all the time on Nightmares and will continue to say it. I feel, horror is cyclical. So what is on trend for horror is always reflecting what is going on in the bigger society, always. I can give you a million examples of this. And so now, as we move into more, I would say, obvious social awareness and social thrillers, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And at the end of the day, the average moviegoer is going to be able to watch a genre film about a virus or a bug or whatever it is that makes people's arms fall off or whatever it does, and they're going to be able to take it at face value, or they can also be aware and dig a little deeper and take it for commentary as well as a great horror film. So the idea that, again, I just think that the idea that studios and artistic filmmakers are coming together and embracing genre is only going to do good things for genre.
I couldn't agree more. All right, so before we get into your live Twitter questions, a couple of things to let you guys know about. If you weren't aware about the news that came out in the Hollywood Reporter about everything going on with Collider, you should check out that article. But we're also going to be talking to you guys because you guys had a lot of questions. I mean, whether it was on Facebook or Twitter or wherever it was, for a long time, you guys wanted to know what was going on, what's happening with Collider, when are we going to get some answers, and they were all very valid responses. But there was a time and place to be able to talk about those things. And one of the big ways to be able to talk to you guys, we're doing a bit of a town hall. We're going to do a town hall, which is going to be on Monday, 10 a.m. PST. It's going to be live, and we're answering all of your questions about the new deal with Collider. So you'll find out a little bit more as far as how to submit questions. Mark Ellis will be hosting it. It'll be myself. It'll be Steve Frosty Weintraub. It'll be Dennis Zen and Mark Fernandez, the new owner of Collider, who will all be taking your questions the day of, on Monday. One of the other things I wanted to let you guys know, the gentleman to my right here will be taking on Little Evil in a live schmodown. That's right, a live schmodown on March 15th at the El Portal Theater. We'll also see the Wildberries versus the Real Rejects. It's live. You can get your tickets. Go to the description of this video. Go to fullscreenlive.com and get your tickets. It's going to be a full-on show. We'll have a meet and greet, all that stuff. Make sure you buy your tickets now. They are selling out quick, so go check that out. Jedi Council dropped yesterday, and an all-new schmodown will drop today. Josh McCouga, Nick Scarpino, and the main event will be McWeenie versus Bibiani. Check that out today. That's going down. But now we're going to talk to you guys. You'd submitted some questions over here with the @Collider video, and I'm going to read some of those sons of bitches. Here we go. First one. You can only pick one. Who's the greater composer, John Williams or Hans Zimmer? And let's hear some arguing. Now, before we just all say John Williams, John Williams, John Williams, John Williams, you're not going to say that.
No.
You're going to say Hans Zimmer over Williams. Okay, what's your basis over that?
I like Hans Zimmer's scores better in terms of the consistency of them. I know the Williams stuff is nice and it feels good and you have great themes, but Zimmer is able to do different styles for different movies, and I think he's more he more consistently fits into whatever style of movie he's going to be on. And if you see that documentary score or whatever it is that came out last year, you really get a bird's eye view of how Zimmer composes these and creates these things, the subtlety, the large beats, all those kinds of things. Williams is great. He's evocative. He's classic. Everybody loves him. But, the workmanship of Zimmer can't be ignored or pushed aside either. And the consistency with which he makes these really powerful themes for all these different types of movies, I love. So Williams is classic, but I think Zimmer is the workhorse that you love.
Dennis, you like to argue with Rocha. Do you want to argue with him now?
I won't vehemently argue against him. I'll pick John Williams. I do agree. I think probably Hans Zimmer is more diverse in the type of scores that he does. But, maybe because we've been... I've been watching some Spielberg movies lately, and all those John Williams scores, they're just so classic. They're so iconic that I can't vote against him.
Clarke.
So my neighbor has a wind chime, and I swear to you, it plays me the Star Wars theme every time. Every time there's a big wind, and I say that to say I'm kind of like, all right, John Williams, like, did you just have a wind chime outside?
Right.
So I don't know. This is not a fight that I'm willing to die on any sword for. So let's just I pick both.
You pick both. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it Williams the nod. I don't disagree with your arguments. I just think body of work and also the fact that John Williams has inspired Hans Zimmer, inspired everybody. He's the gold standard. He's the gold standard. When you look at I was playing this game with my daughter, 6, the other day, and I put on John Williams' greatest hits. And at 6 years old, she can start recognizing all these movies because that's how memorable they are. That's what Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, Superman. You look at all the ones that he did, and he created these big themes. As far as an overall musician goes, like you put Hans Zimmer's music in the background, it's gorgeous. It is music that it's not as I say recognizable. A lot of stuff that he does because there is the casual fan, right? You play them Star Wars or even Superman, depending on how old they are, like that.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight they might get for sure. The new Superman theme is
Man
gorgeous.
of Steel is fantastic.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people right away as memorable as the John Williams theme.
Right.
I love Hans Zimmer.
Well,
Hans Zimmer is one of my favorite composers of all time. I'm just saying, when you compare the two of them, it's hard to put anybody up against John Williams. But by the way, that was also sent in by Terry McGinnis at Comic Fan. So thank you for that. All right,
Beyond, nice.
Yeah. Question number 2 here. I'm gonna start with Clarke on this one. At Scooby Dooby Doo. At Subatomic Freak, he says, "What's your potential dark horse surprise pick to win at the Academy Awards?" His pick is PTA for Best Director.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That would be a surprise.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of on Twitter specifically, like a lot of people putting their money on Get Out winning Best Picture. That would be cray.
Right.
I would not be able to believe that. Now I've said for a long time that I did think that Jordan was going to win Best Screenplay. I did think that, like, I've thought that for a long time. But if it won Best Picture, holy cow, that would be huge. I mean, that would be a really big thing. And that'd be crazy. So that's probably mine.
Dennis.
Well, I mean, just a side note on that subject. There was an article that came out. They were talking about there was the younger voters that just came into the voting academy, talking about how they heard some older members saying they were not even watching Get Out and be just dismissing. I don't think that's like a race thing. I think it's just a generational thing and type of, like, if it was a comic book movie or some sort of whatever, they're just like, whatever. It's not going to win anyways. I'm not going to watch it. So that's why if it actually won, it'd be a huge surprise. Not that he's a dark horse, but I think Sam Rockwell is favored to win Best Supporting, but I think William Dafoe's got a pretty good shot at winning for Florida Project.
Yeah, I was going to say Willem Dafoe's got a good shot, but I would also, I think Jordan Peele winning director would be very interesting, and I don't think it's going to happen over Del Toro, but I don't think it's out of the realm. At PTA, I don't think this is his year. I don't think that movie...
It doesn't have enough heat.
Yeah, that's the thing. It didn't have that, because sometimes, even if it doesn't catch on with, like, the fans or people who are going to see it, it usually catches on in the Academy, and the Academy didn't seem to have too much buzz on it, and Get Out seemed to have a lot more buzz on it. So if there was going to be a shocker over Del Toro, I'd probably go with Peele.
I go with Gerwig. I think that would be the big shocker. I think with the Time's Up movement, Me Too movement, this has been building since last year before these votes have come in. So why wouldn't she? And she's on the cover of Time this week. So there's there's a lot of a kind of an underground push for Greta Gerwig now. They've kind of elevated her to be the symbol of what can be heralded here with the new Oscar voters, the new movements that are happening. So I think that would be my dark horse candidate to take it, and it would be incredible if she does. And by the way, it broke today that Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty are going to present the Best Picture again.
No,
Please God, it's
are
true.
They really?
Yep, TMZ reported it last night. They've been at rehearsals. And they've made jokes about it. No joke.
There better be a rehearsals with it.
If they let them
Who's
do
more
it,
awake, Faye Dunaway or Bruce Willis?
That's right. I'd rather have her in a Die Hard movie.
She wanted nothing to do with being there last time.
They should not put them there, man. It's ridiculous.
Man, it's so funny. But then they're going to crack a joke. And
of course they are.
I mean,
They've got to.
All right, we'll see. By the way, great questions so far, but there are a couple of the franchise questions, so we'll ask one. Why not? Blue Leafs 13. Blue Leafs 13. He's asking, Dennis, in your opinion, in 15 to 20 years, will the MCU be looked on as the biggest movie franchise in terms of popularity, or will Star Wars remain as the most popular franchise? I believe that the MCU will become bigger. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, currently, right now, the MCU is, I think, technically bigger in terms of the amount of money. Obviously, Star Wars did it over
movies.
Less amount of movies,
Right.
yes. I think so. I think the course that they're running right now is just, even if you are someone who doesn't like the Marvel movies, you can't say anything bad about the business that they're running.
Right.
Just like we talked about the way they announced.
From the marketing alone.
The way they announced the release date move. Like, it's so smart. It's something that people are going to catch on to. It's very viral. It's very funny. It's, with the whole, getting Robert Downey Jr.
They involve the fans.
Yeah. So, it's so clever. So I think they're going to keep going. And as long as Kevin Feige is running that ship, it's going to...
Well, that's the point. That's the $1 million point right there. And if once again yesterday we even pieced this thing out. I had a whole 15-minute conversation about how I believe that Dave Filoni should be in charge of Lucasfilm Creative. I just think that the direction that Lucasfilm is in regards to creative needs to be changed. And until that happens, I have to agree. I think that right now the way that Marvel is being run and the consistency with how they're being run and the storytelling that is being done, I think with the younger generation, it's gonna connect more. And look at what movies like Black Panther did. Black Panther became a phenomenon not just with comic book movie fans, like I told you, my mother-in-law, should I see the Black Panther? And I'm sure she's seen the movie since. But it's like, even I watched the thing that they did with Jimmy Fallon, to how it meant to people. I don't know if you guys saw this. They took some people how much it meant to them, and they were talking to like the Black Panther poster, and then Chadwick Boseman came out and surprised them, and it just, there was so much to what they're doing, and they're making an impact. And I think that right now, Star Wars has a little bit to gain. Now, Star Wars is very popular. It always will be. And for a long time, I said it was almost Teflon. It's not as Teflon as it was. But it needs some jolts. But Clarke, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think structurally the MCU has the formula cracked. Now the question is that sustainable? I think it is. I think that they are pushing boundaries. I don't buy into the idea of every MCU movie is exactly the same. Like I don't buy into that. I think they're pushing boundaries. I think with each phase they are trying new things. They're expanding their storytelling. And you and I have talked about this a lot, Kristian. I feel like Lucasfilm and Star Wars just plays it safe. They're playing it too safe. And I want to see more. I want to see different types of creators and voices who are not necessarily going to follow marching orders. Like I want to, and granted, I do think I loved what they did with Last Jedi. I think that was risky.
Right.
But I think in terms of like the team that they're building with their extended stuff is just nothing that makes me go awesome.
I don't even think they have an extended team.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is, well, I mean, I guess what I mean is like the Game of Thrones guys, bringing them in, or like bringing in these certain directors or certain storytellers, and we're gonna give them a trilogy and them a trilogy, and it's just kind of, or the confirmed side stories that we are going to actually invest in. Like to me, this is all kind of par for the course.
Yeah, and you know what it is, though, Clarke? I think that just shows, and even with those release dates that they're announced, there's a plan. It doesn't, and it's this point I made yesterday, there's no plan with Lucasfilm right now. It's like, what's your take on your next Star Wars movie? Right. It's completely different than anything we've done from any of the other movies that connect. Oh, but you're a popular director, I like your take. Right. Just do that movie. And then what are we going to do for the next one? We'll figure it out when it's time.
Well, they don't want to connect them. That's why, like, the Rian Johnson thing is going to be in a place or a time that we've never seen before. That's why, probably Game of Thrones people are going to do, like, Knights of the Old Republic type stuff.
Well, they do the Old Republic.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they're not going to connect them all.
No, but they shouldn't. But
I think they're doing it on purpose, though, because they don't have a plan to connect everything. Well, if they had a Marvel-like plan, then you would see, okay, let's do this on the side, but this is happening at the same time as this one.
But it's also harder, though, too, to be fair. It also is a little harder because of, like, when they do movies, whether it's Obi-Wan, which I don't think is going to happen anymore, but if they do Obi-Wan, those can't necessarily connect to they can connect to the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. So my point goes the other way.
Well, everything is cyclical, right? You said this about horror, same thing, right? The Handy Hardy series were the franchise to be in the 40s and 50s, right? Then it was James Bond in the 60s, right? That died out. Every 15 to 20 years, if you're talking that question, that makes sense. To me, eventually, the next generation, they're not going to want to go back and watch these old Star Wars things, the original trilogy. They're going to see.
You don't think so?
A lot of them see them as dated. The new generation now sees a lot of it as dated, and they like the prequels more.
Yeah, I'm not
some people.
agree.
So that's it. But there's been negativity since that original trilogy. A lot of people don't like the prequels. A lot of people have issues with Rogue One Force Awakens being tracing A New Hope. A lot of people have issues now with the solo behind the scenes stuff. And we see with Kathleen Kennedy, she's battling with all these young directors that you want to see come in and do these new takes. And so there's a lot of unrest. Whereas Marvel's just this, man. Marvel's just chilling and go along. And I agree.
It's sectional.
It's sectional. If Kevin Feige keeps it going, then yes. But if he leaves and someone steps in and messes it up, then I think there's problems.
All right, I want to do the last one here, and I want to end with Clarke, because it's kind of a two-parter. Starting with @BobGray, who at Pennywise says, with Jessica Chastain said to be negotiating for Beth as a panel. Oh, so all of us, okay. What either A or B list actors would you like to predict being in the cast for the rest of the Losers Club? Before you answered that, there was one more as far as the budget of it, and that's A Clay 19 says, with the first It only costing $35 million, what do you think will be the budget for It Chapter 2? Now, I'll start with this, Clarke, because I think all of the cast will probably be A-listers for the most part.
Interesting.
Right away, the $35 million goes up. So I'm saying that the second one will probably be around $100 million. What do you think the budget will be, and who should they get for the cast?
Well, okay. So there's a lot going on here. First of all, I think that it makes sense that if you have a successful first half or first part of a bigger story, that you invest the resources in the second movie, because, you know, and I had heard stories, you know, when they were looking for a replacement for Cary Fukunaga, that the low budget was really important to New Line. They were like, you have $30 million. That's it. There's no negotiating here. And I think that what they saw in trusting Muschietti to sort of really adapt that story in the right way and bring it to life, okay, we can give them that much more. I think you're right, just in terms of studio speak, it probably will hit about 100 million. I don't know if that makes me nervous or not.
I think this is cast.
Okay, so to go back to that point, and we talked about this a little bit when that Jessica Chastain story started floating around in a more official capacity. I don't think you have to go A-list. I really don't. I think that you are in a position with the follow-up to it where you have that brand is the selling point. The kids are coming back. We like Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise, and it's got that name recognition. It was a global phenomenon. People are coming back. So as a result, I think having somebody like Jessica Chastain attached, if that ends up happening, is a great anchor. It's an anchor that says to other potential cast members that they are taking this seriously, right? And knowing the source material, it's more of a drama for the grown-ups anyway. That said, I want to see them cast the right people.
Right.
I don't care who they are, honestly. And I do think that it would be a little distracting to see A-listers in this situation. Last thing I'll say is, you know, a lot of these grown-up cast members are going to die. So you got to think about killing A-listers, and so, you know, you got to think about
that. I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit, because I think because I think that you cast A-list actors, you don't necessarily have to cast A-list movie stars.
I agree. Talent, A-list talent, yes.
Like Joel Edgerton to me is not a A-list movie star, but he's an A-list actor.
Same with like the Bill Haders or Patrick Wilsons or
Ben Foster.
Ben Foster is so good.
So that's where I go. I think we're on the same page.
Yes, totally.
So A-list actors, yes. A-list movie stars, I agree. Like, I don't want to see Leonardo DiCaprio pop in there. I don't think I need to. But Joel Edgerton, that's a role that stands out to me. Throwing it kind of, you know, for what's the funny kid, Finn. Finn. Seth Rogen. You know, would be interesting, or maybe even Seth Rogen as the kid, because Seth Rogen can act. If you saw Jobs, he can act besides just being goofy. And he's doing that other movie that's I forget which one it was, but I don't want to see Christian Bale in it. Right. I think that certain actors I'd like to see, but Rocha, first of all, budget-wise, and then give me some cast choices.
Well, I like Jerry O'Connell as the kind of reverse. Like, remember he was the fat kid in Stand By Me. To have him be the fat kid that gets in shape, that kind of thing. I like the idea of even Joe Jordan Peele said he retired. I wouldn't mind Jordan Peele playing the black character later on.
Mike.
Mike, who gets there. So there's a lot of stuff. I like Giovanni Ribisi as a consideration as well. Those are these guys who've done some A-list work, but they're more like stronger in ensemble situations. Could work all around. But I agree with Clarke. Whoever's best for the role, but A-list talent. Absolutely. Can act.
Can I just say, sorry, before we go? Sterling K. Brown is a superstar on television. And he's going to be in Predator, or The Predator, or whatever the hell that movie's called. But I get the...
Shane Black's The Predator.
Shane Black's The Predator. But I think that he is going to be poised for... It's funny because Andre Holland is who I always envisioned as Mike, but now he's on Castle Rock. He's on the Stephen King shared universe TV show. And so I don't know if while they did just cast Chosen Jacobs, and they're mixing and matching all of their like Stephen King movie people and putting them into this TV show in different roles. Like, I think Sterling K. Brown is poised to be a superstar. I'm not saying anything revolutionary if you watched him on OJ, or if you watched him on This Is Us, but
even Black Panther.
So I want him in there.
We should talk about Andre more. I mean, we went to school with him, so it's funny that he doesn't always come up in our minds.
Andre Holland.
Yeah, we went to school to Florida State with him at the same time.
Oh my gosh, the Nick. If you ever watched
Nick is great.
Nick, anyway.
I agree with you guys where I don't think they need to cast any type of movie stars in there, because, you know, with the first one, other than Finn Wolfhard, no one really knew who the rest of the cast was. And so I don't think they have to. I mean, you know, maybe because I just recently rewatched Munich, maybe Eric Bana in one of the roles.
But they were trying to make Eric Bana happen at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I don't
But
know
it didn't
why. I
really
don't know
work.
why he's not a movie
Well,
star.
you know,
to be honest
you know
with
what-
Some people
you know-
just don't cross over. Josh
yeah.
Lucas,
I'll
great,
tell- but you
doesn't
know,
cross over.
but that's a great point because there's two actors that were shoved down our throats as movie stars and it never popped.
Yeah.
But when they were in supporting roles, they work well. And those two people that I could also see in this are Sam Worthington.
Sure.
Because Sam Worthington in supporting roles is great when and part of an ensemble is really good. And the other one is Taylor Kitsch. Taylor Kitsch in side roles is really good, and those guys would work together well in this environment.
But you know, one more thing is that I think what we saw. So Finn is arguably one of the bigger names that was in the first movie, and when I found out he was cast as Richie, I was like, "Whoa, what? And is he gonna have to push too hard?" Because I don't know him personally, but I met him before he was a phenomenon, and he's the sweetest, like most lovely human, and that's not his character on Stranger Things. So my bigger same with Bill Skarsgård. Like, I mean, you guys know if you watch Nightmares, I was not about that Skarsgård.
Right.
So my point is, I hope they learned a lesson by casting against type in the first movie and really letting these actors shine. And so whoever they cast as the grown-ups, you know, I don't necessarily agree with a Seth Rogen, but I like that mindset.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, let's let these people play roles that maybe necessarily they wouldn't be.
I'd like Tobey Maguire. I'd like to wash Spider-Man 3 out of my head. So I'd love to see Toby. He's
been retired, isn't he?
Yeah, well,
Where's he
bring
been?
him out. He's been playing poker.
All right, well, he's retired and so are we. That's the end of the show. So I wanted to thank all of you guys today. I'd like to thank the panel for joining us today. And thank you all. Movie Talk, a lot of fun. Big news once again happening, like I mentioned before with the March 15th. Schmodown, that's going on. Get your tickets today. But also the Town Hall is this Monday. Get your voice heard. Mark Ellis will be hosting it. He'll be back on Monday to host this show. And I will be avoiding meetings. Bye.
Hey everybody, Mark Ellis here. Thanks for watching this episode of Collider Movie Talk. You want to watch more? Then click up here, or you can click right here for more great content from Collider. And if you haven't subscribed to Collider Video, do so right now and share this vid with your friends. Thanks for watching.